Hello and welcome back to our Million Part Bible series. We've been going through chapter 6 for a little while. We're still on the Sermon on the Mount. And chapter 6 has all been about how believers can behave in hypocritical or genuine ways. And we've gone through giving, we've gone through praying, we've gone through fasting. And all of these examples, what was being said was that you could either do these things for the attention of men or you could do it for the praise of God. And throughout these, we've never gone through it before, but a certain question's begged. So we're getting all of this stuff about your behavior, right? And we all know that our salvation is from faith alone. It's not about works. So what exactly is here? In all these examples, we talk about heavenly rewards and treasures in heaven that you would you would get when you're doing these things in the genuine way, and you won't get when you already have received your rewards right here on earth from people. So what exactly does Jesus mean when he says this? What rewards do Christians seek? And this gets clarified in the next few verses, as well as a little bit of a look from prior in the Bible. So 19 to 33. That's a longer one than usual. Maybe we'll finish this Matthew book by the end of next year or something like that. But he goes, "Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up yourselves treasure in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Do not try. Therefore, I tell you, do you worry about your life? What will you eat or drink? Or about your body? What will you wear? Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. And are you not much more valuable than they are? Can you, can any one of you be worrying? Can any one of you by worrying add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers in the field grow? They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? The pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Now, this whole sequence is actually used by the prosperity gospels. You know the type, you got the guy in the $5,000 suit and the $25,000 watch, and he has a whole bunch of jet planes that he can go through. You see this a lot in this kind of way of saying, well, you should give everything to us because God is going to reward you twicefold and you're going to be able to be just fine. And that's pretty disgusting and a complete misinterpretation of what you're seeing here. But what Jesus is saying is that sooner or later, everything you have will be gone. It's very hard to let that sink in because so much of our world is about materialism that you think that these things around you must define everything about you in our society. But to really picture that one day everything you have is going to be gone. And unlike earthly treasures, these kingdom type treasures are ones that you're going to be able to keep for all eternity. So that begs a question. So, what is treasure in heaven that you're going to get as a reward here? And to really explain that, you have to get into what is heavens. The spirits that put their trust in Jesus will be welcomed into a heavenly realm, not your body. Remember, from dust you came, to dust you'll return. But your soul is eternal. And when you die, you go to the heavenly throne room. And that's what we would kind of consider heaven for the most part when you think about being in the presence of God and Jesus, and there's this big throne and golden arches and everything. I'm not saying that's necessarily how it will look, but that's more of our conception of heaven. But we're actually only going to be there for a little while. He created humans to live in a physical body. We see this in First Corinthians, that we're going to be resurrected in a new body on a physical earth. We see this in Revelation, that we come back to earth with Jesus at his second coming. So this idea that heaven's going to be somewhere on the clouds and separated from the earth we're on right now is actually completely incorrect and not biblical. A lot of people don't realize that. What we consider heaven, what a lot of people consider heaven, is just a waiting room. We're not going to be sitting on clouds with angels and harps. Maybe that's why so many people don't really care about heaven, because doesn't that sound boring? Can you imagine all eternity just listening to harp music and sitting there? It's a little bit strange, and maybe that's kind of the enemy getting into the system and introducing these concepts to confuse you. But when Jesus does come back and heaven is moved to our earth, the world is going to be an unimaginably better place with no war, no conflict, no illness, no pain. We'll be able to enjoy the earth like Adam was intended to. And everything else that we think is just this Hallmark card. So we're waiting to have the earth as intended. But obviously, if we're back on this physical earth, what will we have? Where are you going to live in this garden-like world? What will you have? And that's your heavenly reward, and it will depend on your work here. Once again, not your salvation. You're going to be there, but some other people might be doing a little bit better than you. It's all going to be terrific, but what you have there is dependent on how you behave here. You want to know something funny? That's exactly what Jews believe. Our depictions as Christians is exactly the same as what a Jew would have about this earth that comes back to the physical realm and is heaven. There's no difference whatsoever between these depictions. Maybe our vision of what the Messiah would be, but at that point, maybe every Jewish person will accept Jesus as the Messiah during the second coming. So there's very little reason to argue with Jewish people because our conception of the final episode is pretty much the exact same thing if you just change a few names around. I always think about, imagine being there and you're getting all these rewards and Paul is next to you, and Paul said that this is nothing to do with sin, your judgment here. That's been paid for, that's been separated. So what you're being evaluated for in this point is not your salvation, but what did you do to serve God? What did you do to advance this kingdom and help more and more people? And if you did things for the praise of people, you've already received your reward. You would say those things, and they'd say, "Well, we don't care about them. You already got your reward for that." And that's really what this entire chapter has been about. So that's the question here. Are you trying to store earthly treasures, or do you have eyes for this eternity that you are promised within our gospel? This is what the Pharisees did so poorly, and why Jesus constantly went after them. They pretended to be austere and thoughtful of God, but they loved money, and they say it right there exactly. That's what Jesus said, that they schemed for it endlessly. And this is now what we see the prosperity gospel and the prosperity church working to do right now. Jesus says that if you're chasing after this world, you'll be trapped in all sorts of trivial pursuits and darkness. The Christian would technically should appear completely different than that. We won't name names, but think about those guys we talked about earlier who are living this life of incredible wealth, all on the backs of taking advantage of their congregation, who might be hungry and poor, but they've been tricked into thinking that if they can just give this guy the best life ever, that they're all going to be getting an amazing reward, mostly on this earth. It's pretty perverse and pretty distorted. You think about those preachers who do that kind of thing. Where do you think their hearts are? You see the money around them. It stands to reason that that's where their eyes are looking. As Jesus said, that's where their heart is. If you want to see what somebody is like, look around them. So to drill this home one more time, I know we've said it quite a few times in here. You're saved by faith alone. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about your testimony. You only have so much time, but what have you done in that time? And your place in the kingdom is determined by that. You imagine with the apostles, people like Paul, will have much more than the person who just said, "Yes, they got baptized and they go to church and they believe it, but not very much, and don't really care about advancing the cause and spreading it." The distractions of the eyes, the things that you're looking for, is the greatest weapon of the enemy. You're going to be distracted by the fancy stuff right here, and you're going to forget all about eternity. And that's ultimately the goal of these things when you're living in a society where so much is about wealth, and we celebrate people just for being wealthy at this point. If you're wealthy and attractive, then you're considered an idol that should be looked up upon, and everybody should appreciate you just for that. And it's really a complete 180 and a distortion of how the world should be. For the unbeliever, this world is the best it will ever be, and for the believer, this is going to be the worst. Now, we talked about the garden a little bit, the Garden of Eden. And it was just kind of connected to this. Somebody had said, "Well, do you think that Jesus, or do you think that God uh, put the tree there so Adam would eat, so all of these things are fallen? And if so, why?" And I do think that it was intentional. God built darkness before he ever built man because he needed a place to store sin. He knew the sin was coming, and that's why darkness was initially brought in. And kind of reminds me of the prodigal son story. That, let's say this boy, before he even left, before he went and done his prodigal thing, before he left, his father held him, by force and said, "No, you're not leaving. You're never leaving this place." Now, what would have been gained from that? Not a true follower, not somebody who chooses to be with the Father. Something completely less. But when he left, when he sinned and left and then came back, that showed the forgiveness of God, his Father, in that story. That showed the mercy and the grace. And without that fall, we would have never seen anything. If God had just kept us all in Eden without any sin, you wouldn't have gained any true followers. So you almost have to let the people go. You have to let them sin, build this world where they're heading towards that direction, and then give them a chance to come back and truly love God. Because if you were just sitting there and had no choice, that's not what love is all about. So the entire story from Eden to the new heaven on earth is about humans having that free will to go out and sin, and then being able to experience the grace and forgiveness of God and be able to get back and choose to be part of Him. This is all about free will. So keep that in mind next time people talk to you about the Genesis story. I think it puts the whole Bible in much better context. So, thank you very much for joining us again. This was a really exciting one to do. I've been going back through Genesis, and it's so worth a read in the Bible study. So, yeah, remember to like, subscribe, comment, share. At least a few hundred times each. Website's up. Go check out liberateBibleStudy.com. Make sure to keep going to the YouTube, and we'll talk to you later. But have a great week, and God bless.